You believed in loyalty. You believed in love. You built your whole life on that foundation, and then in a moment of their infidelity, it cracked. If this has happened to you, you know that it's more than just sadness. It's like a mental game of tug of war. One part of you holds on to the memories of who you thought you were and who you thought your partner was, and how you thought love worked in the real world. You think of the good times, the promises, the life that you were building together, the future that you were planning toward. And then the other part, on the other side of the rope, is just staring at the broken reality of what they did. And those two parts don't fit together. You find yourself replaying conversations, searching for clues that you must have missed. You ask yourself, how did I misread this so badly? Was any of this real? Was I stupid for believing in love? And your mind is desperately trying to make the story coherent and able to fit together. But every time you try, no matter what angle you come at it from, it's like you hit a wall. The pieces just won't fit together. And I think people understand that dealing with infidelity is emotionally exhausting, but it's also mentally exhausting. You feel disoriented, the ground feels like it's shifting, your memories, expectations, your feelings, none of them seem to line up properly anymore. And of course, there's this gnawing self-doubt that says, if I was so wrong about this, then what else have I been wrong about? Some people will say that you're just overthinking it, you need to stop replaying everything, as if your mind is just choosing to obsess, rather than desperately trying to solve this puzzle. Others will say if you really still do believe in love, then you'll forgive them and move on. And so now you have this impossible choice of, okay, do I give up on the idea of love or do I give up on them? Or other people will say, well, why are you even stuck on this? Like, move on, it's not that complicated. But inside, it feels like the most complicated thing that you've ever had to face. Because it's not just about the betrayal, and it's not just about that person. It's the entire story, narrative arc that you've been living in no longer seems to work. And a lot of people just seem to assume that if you were just a little bit stronger, then this really wouldn't be a moment of collapse. I don't think that's true. Like, I think our minds operate in these moments of collapse the exact way that we would expect, because your reality has been shattered. In a lot of ways, the mistake is thinking that you should be able to just snap your fingers and make everything fit together the way that it did before. That's not usually how healing works. Things don't usually go back to how they were. And after everything's been shattered, it does take some time to figure out what that new reality will now look like. So to get a little bit more specific, what's happening in your mind is often called cognitive dissonance. It's a term for what happens when you hold two contradictory beliefs at the same time. And in your case, it's the clash between I believed in loyalty and love on the one hand, and I experienced betrayal on the other. Your brain craves consistency, it wants the world to make sense, and so when it encounters information that doesn't fit the story, it creates mental tension. And carrying that cognitive dissonance, it's like carrying it requires you to be in this state of stress, anxiety, and confusion. And it's really a signal from your brain that something needs to be resolved. These two stories can't keep living in tension. So much of the spinning thoughts, the sleepless nights, the endless loops of asking how and why and when, it's your brain trying to integrate these two incompatible realities. It's like trying to force together two puzzle pieces that aren't even from the same board. They're not even from the same set. No matter how hard you push them together, they won't fit. And the more that you keep trying to push, the more painful the whole process becomes. It's exhausting. It takes up a ton of mental energy. And it's one of the hardest things that a mind ever has to do, which is reconstructing a reality that was shattered by someone that you trusted. And what makes it so hard is that these pieces of the puzzle, they're not just an intellectual game. Like, these are very important things with a lot of emotion attached to them. So when you're stuck in this cognitive dissonance and you start to realize that this is what you've been doing, what can you change? First thing, again, as always, is to just label it. Recognize what it is that you're doing. When you feel that mental pull in two directions, instead of feeling the need to get an answer to something that might not have an answer, say to yourself, I might be experiencing some cognitive dissonance here. I feel torn between what I used to believe and what happened. Naming it can allow you to at least understand that. if you can't understand how to fit together these two puzzle pieces, you can at least understand why you're feeling this confusion. Number 2, get it out of your head. So write down on a piece of paper a line down the middle and start putting together those two stories. On the one hand, have the old story that you used to believe. On the other hand, have the most dramatic version of the new story and intentionally exaggerate them to an extent so that you can see just how dissonant, not lining up, these two stories are. Writing is not just for super introverted people or super artsy people. Journaling is a very healthy way to process trauma and to make sense of what happened to you. Externalizing your thoughts helps you see patterns that feel undeniably true when you're thinking them, but have a lot more ability to scrutinize once you get them out of your head. Number 3, separate fact from story. So ask yourself, what do I actually know for sure? And then where am I filling in the color? Oftentimes the most painful parts and the most confusing parts of the dissonance come from the stories that we tell ourselves about what the betrayal means about us, not the facts of what happened. A fact might be that the person that you were faithful to was unfaithful to you. That's a fact. The story might be, this means that love is not reliable, or this means that people are no longer trustworthy, or this means that my life has no meaning. The telltale sign of a story is that it is global and kind of impossible to prove or disprove one way or another, whereas the fact is something concrete, specific, and it's the type of thing where even if you weren't there, someone could have in principle taken a picture of it or taken a video of it. There's no way that you could take a picture or take a video of the idea that love no longer exists or that you have no value in society. Those are ideas, those are stories. So as you're writing down your thoughts, notice what things are stories and what things are facts. Number 4, let your emotions coexist. The nice thing about emotions is that there's a lot less conflict between them. When you're believing as fact two contradictory things, that causes a lot of stress. When you have contradictory emotions, it can be some turmoil in going back and forth between them, but it does not have the same anxiety or tension behind it. You can be angry and still love the same person. You can grieve and be relieved at the same time. You can miss someone and know that something is over. None of these cancel each other out. Emotions aren't as mathematical and puzzle piece-like as facts and stories often are. They don't have to add up perfectly. That is the beautiful thing about emotions. And so as you are starting to untangle why are these emotions the way that they are, you start to let go of the need for the story to make perfect sense. And you can stick to the facts and just recognize, okay, these are the facts. These stories that I'm constructing are kind of BS, but these emotions underneath it all are true. And it's not this conflict for those emotions to be contradictory. Number 5, talk to someone objective. A coach, a therapist, a support group, a friend who's good at not giving black and white advice. Someone who won't take sides but will help you hold the contradictions without rushing you to resolve them. 6, take it one piece at a time. You don't have to figure out the whole relationship today. Pick one area of confusion, one memory, one question, and work through that step by step using the steps that I've talked about. So you could do a whole exercise of writing down on a piece of paper the two sides, analyzing fact versus story, feeling the conflicting emotions, all in just one small aspect of this. And if you start to do that layer by layer, you can eventually start to untangle all these things. Number 7, ground yourself when the spiral starts. So when your mind is spinning too fast, bring yourself back to your body. And speaking out loud can be helpful. Literally saying something out loud to get yourself back to the activity at hand, to get yourself back into your body. Breathing, feeling your feet on the floor. If you're sitting down, feeling your body in that chair. If you're lying down, feeling the different points at which your body's in contact with the floor or the mattress. Notice something in the room. This doesn't solve the dissonance, but it keeps you from being consumed by it. It's okay to check out if the spiraling gets too intense. And I think it's good when you're in this time of reconstruction. All of these stories that you've believed are starting to collapse, and that's painful. But the nice thing is that it's like a demolition crew has gone through and cleared out some old buildings in order to be able to build something new there. And so I want to just kind of expand your mind a little bit to consider a diverse range of perspectives, not because any one of them is going to be the answer for you, but it might have a seed of truth that, when planted in your mind and in your life, can have some positive effect in the future. So number one, psychology lets us know that this is normal. Cognitive dissonance is a well-documented response to betrayal. Psychology also tells us that post-traumatic growth is a real thing that can happen. So to the extent that this has shaken you, it can also set you up for future success. Additionally, from a more spiritual perspective, a lot of different spiritual traditions teach that the moments when our worldviews break are the moments when we grow. The discomfort isn't punishment. It is a point of friction that is intentionally designed to expand us. Stoicism as a philosophy, not just like a lack of emotion, would say to focus on what you can control. You can't control what they did. You can control how you respond, how you treat yourself, and how you rebuild moving forward. A more existentialist perspective might invite you to confront the absurdity. Betrayal doesn't have to make sense. Certain things just are. Certain things are incomprehensible. Your task isn't to find a neat explanation. It's to rebuild meaning for yourself on your terms. Religious traditions can also offer frameworks and direction. A lot of Christians find peace through prayer and contemplation when grappling with different paradoxes of their own faith. Buddhism talks about observing thoughts without clinging to them, which often allows, especially with the emotions, to just allow those emotions and those thoughts to simply be what they are, not force them to have to make sense. That would be kind of the approach of, instead of saying I have to choose what beliefs I have right now, is to just kind of take a step back from playing this game at all. A lot of religions would also talk about the idea of trials and the importance of having patience during them, and that will lead to an eventual clarity on the other side. Kind of like the dark night of the soul, how it leads to a deeper trust in oneself and in the divine. So take what resonates, leave what doesn't. The point is that you're not alone in this. Human beings across time and culture have faced the shattering of how they mentally viewed the world, the stories and narratives that they lived in, and they've found ways through. Whether you choose to be a part of those that find their way through is up to you. A client that I recently worked with, I'm obviously not going to give names or talk in too much detail, but she was telling me that she felt like her life and her soul were being torn in two. She believed in loyalty above almost anything, like it was the most important thing to her. And her husband's betrayal felt like a betrayal, not just of her as a person, but her identity. And every time that she started to think clearly, her mind would loop back and forth between he loved me and he lied to me. So as our conversations went on, what ended up making sense for her was doing exactly what we talked about, beginning to just list out how much of this is true and how much of this is story. And over the course of that session, she began to see that the biggest pain wasn't actually the betrayal itself, but the story that she'd been telling herself. And that story, deep down, was that if I had been enough, this wouldn't have happened. And so separating that assumption from the facts, getting it externalized, having someone help her to kind of dig deep and figure out what's actually driving this tension, allowed her to breathe again. And there was more work to do in that session, but that was really the turning point. Another client that I worked with described the dissonance as living in two different movies at once. In one movie, he was still the happy husband. In the other, he was someone having to rebuild from the rubble. And he couldn't make the two movies merge. They weren't going to be the same movie. And so he eventually stopped trying after talking about it, realizing that those two didn't have to find some meeting point. And what peace looked like for him was eventually getting to this point of, I know what happened. I know how I feel today. I know what I want to do the next couple weeks. I don't have to know what comes after that. I know how I want to show up. And that simple boundary and framing of the story, and leaving room for not knowing the full picture yet, gave him the room to start moving forward. And so these people, are their entire lives changed because of one session, one aha moment? No. But they're massive turning points. And a big theme in both those two examples is stopping fighting the dissonance. Start working with it. That's when the pieces for them began to slowly form a new picture. So if you're in the middle of this, I want you to hear very clearly that you are not weak. You're not broken. You're not too much. You're not going too slow. You're processing one of the most disorienting things that a human being can face. This does not mean you did something wrong to get to this point. It's a sign that your mind is just doing something really difficult. Rebuilding a coherent worldview and story is extremely hard. You don't have to figure it all out today. You don't have to resolve every contradiction right now. Healing happens in layers. And as you separate fact from assumption, fact from story, as you validate your emotions instead of judging them and allow those emotions to coexist with what seem like conflicting emotions, the dissonance really does begin to settle. And what really anchors it is taking some type of ownership in what the new story is going to be. And that can be largely determined just by you, or it can be kind of a mixture of drawing from different perspectives as well. Your mind can restore coherence. Your heart can find peace again, but it won't be the same peace as before. You have to trust that it will be a deeper, more wise, more mature, less naive, but just as real, if not more real, type of peace. The people that say that healing is impossible are the people that are insisting on going back. You only find deeper peace moving forward. So keep going, keep rebuilding, ask for help if it makes sense for you, and know that by doing this work, you're doing one of the bravest things that a human being can do.